Now, the Grenfell Tower fire, which killed 72 people in London, was 4.5 years ago. It exposed a massive scandal about unsafe cladding on buildings across the country. And I'm certain at the time we just thought this will get changed. It has to get changed. We've just seen this. It was an absolute national tragedy. And the fact that it had been clad in this stuff that was flammable, we all found just gobsmacking. Well, nothing's happened, essentially. 500,000 people still live in flats that are they're wrapped in flammable materials, making them death traps and unsellable. The University of Sheffield has released new research looking at the impact that this has had on people's mental health, and it's damning. Dr. Jenny Priest from the University of Sheffield wrote the study.
It was a kind of really catastrophic sort of experience for some people, and that's not just something that exists today, but it's something that kind of goes on in the future as well. Several people spoke about points of crisis that they had come to through their experience of building safety problems, and this resulted in them needing to get immediate help from a GP. So things like just feeling that they couldn't go on, that they were trapped and that they couldn't see a way out of this crisis was leading to feelings of suicide and self-harm. If we don't see a change in policy, if we don't see government action, actually, where is this going to end?
Well, where indeed. We asked one flat owner who's lived and breathed this for the past 4.5 years to read through the report.
My name's Will Martin. I'm 33. I'm a junior doctor in Manchester, and I am a leaseholder of a building in Sheffield that's affected by the cladding and fire safety scandal. We found out that we got problems with our building about a week after Grenfell, and the last 4 years have been a total nightmare. The report that came out by Housing Evidence and the University of Sheffield, which evidences the mental health impacts that leaseholders are experiencing because of this scandal, really resonate with me. When I was living in the property before managing to rent it out, I was in continual fear of a fire breaking out. I'd go to sleep every night just meters away from cladding. I'd be unable to sleep, worrying, thinking about how to get out of the property. At one point, we had absolutely no funding, and the cladding alone was going to cost £6 million to remove. Obviously, that's just an unimaginable, unobtainable figure. And it really, really, really does have an impact on your mental health. And I think the main thing for me was this inability to be able to sort of control where my life was going, and still is the case, because I still can't sell the property, can't really plan for the future, can't make choices that secure that future. There is real damage being done to people's mental health. There are people in my building who want to move on because they want to start a family. There's people who want to take jobs elsewhere who aren't as lucky as me and might not be able to rent it out. There's people who contact us from around the country who are in relationships that have broken down. They're married, they bought the flat together, and they want to separate, and they can't sell their property. It's not only the financial pressures, it's the mental health impacts that it's having on people. The damage that has been done by the way that the government has handled this situation, and this feeling of where I sit in the wider scope of things, like where my value is. I'm a junior doctor, I work really hard, I got onto the housing ladder, and now I feel, and have felt for the last 4 years, like my government has just abandoned me and hasn't really listened to myself and the voices of thousands of other leaseholders across the country. So there's that feeling of shame. I have a lot of shame around buying this flat, and I have had for so long. I remember when I first found out about the problems with the building, one of my main feelings was shame. Like, how could I have made this huge mistake? I think this report really just sort of brings it home to all of us, particularly those who are in the campaign who sort of forget about the impact that this is having on the mental health because we're living it every day. It really brings home these severe impacts that it's having on people. The government has said from day one that leaseholders shouldn't have to pay. And the fact of the matter is, the reality on the ground is that leaseholders are paying every single day, both financially and mentally.
Well, Jenny Garrett lives at the Wicker Riverside in Sheffield. It's nearly a year since residents on the higher floors were evacuated after building failed fire safety tests. Jenny owns one of the lower flats. Morning, Jenny.
Morning.
What's this done to you over this past year?
Well, I think just listening to Will there, it really resonates very much with me and a lot of the experience of my neighbours. I mean, when the evacuation happened almost a year ago now, it was literally a case of we had no idea what was going on, and at about 7 o'clock on a Friday night, we had people knocking on the doors on the upper floors saying, "Really sorry, appreciate it's not a good time, but you need to get out right now." And this was middle of December, it was freezing cold, and everyone was just sort of, what on earth is going on? And it then sort of the kind of, I guess, madness of the whole situation set in, and essentially we had a race against time for the leaseholders like myself. So a lot of the people that were evacuated weren't leaseholders, they were just renting their flats. So knew even less about the situation really, because obviously it's the flat owners that are kind of more involved. So we kind of had this race against time to try and get people back into their homes before Christmas. And what that involved was the leaseholders shelling out an awful lot of money, just before one of the most expensive periods of the year. So I actually ended up paying about £1,500 all in one go last December, all in one go. And I'm 25 now, I was 24 at the time. I don't have huge amounts of money sat in a bank account. I'm sensible. I'm much more sensible with my money since all of this has started. But I'm not one of these people that can just sort of rely on a bank account that's sitting for a rainy day. And it's been horrendous. And I think there was the residents that they were staying in hotels. It was COVID. COVID was so much worse this time last year. So people were worrying about going into hotels and whether they were then putting people at risk by having mixed with new people. When we eventually did manage to get the residents that were evacuated back into the flat, as I say, that required an awful lot of money from the leaseholders. And what then happened was the fire service stipulated that in order to have people living in the flats, we had to have a 24-hour waking watch patrol, which was essentially made up of a person. So our building is 10 stories. So it was an actual person patrolling each floor 24/7 in order to essentially alert if a fire broke out. And that was unbelievably expensive. So for about 3 months, we were paying £15,000 a week. And that was split between about, sort of around about 100 people. And it was to the point where by February 2021, we were having notifications from our management company that there's not enough money coming in. If we can't afford to pay the waking watch at the end of this week, you will all be evacuated because you can't stay in the building. And so, I had genuinely, week upon week, I was telling my boss at work, I don't know if I'll be able to work on Monday because I don't know if I'm going to have a home or an office or anywhere access to my computer or the internet, because I just don't know where I'm going to be. And that was absolutely horrendous.
And where are you now, Jenny? What's happened now? Anything?
So I am thankful that we're in a better position now. So I'm in my flat now. We didn't end up being evacuated, although it got right down to the wire several times earlier in the year. We have now been told that we are eligible for the grant funding from the Building Safety Fund to remove the issue our building has with the cladding is actually the insulation that's directly behind it. So it's all flammable and it covers the whole building. So we're very grateful for the fact that we've been given grant funding. But of course, with government funding, there's a lot of complications around actually getting that. So we haven't seen a penny of it yet. We can't start remediation because there's so many hoops that we need to jump through. And there's just general complications within each building that makes that process really slow. So I am sort of sitting here a year on and thinking, well, actually, no remediation has taken place. The only difference between now and then is that we have a fire alarm. So the building's actually no safer. It's just that the alert system is there. And the sort of the fear I have, that this ongoing fear, which is, really resonated with me with what Will was talking about on his piece, is that it's this worry about every month I could get this bill that just completely blows all the money I have out the water. It's this fear that if the fire alarm goes off, it's right, quickly dash. You have to, you can't even assume that it might be a test. You just have to get out and as quickly as you possibly can. And that,
Can I just ask you a question? Because I go back to first of all the absolute outrage, quite rightly, that we all felt over Grenfell, and then the fact that things did move. And do I remember? And forgive me if I'm misremembering this. Don't I remember the Prime Minister saying that leaseholders wouldn't have to pay anything?
Yep, absolutely. I mean,
he did, didn't he?
From the dispatch box, it's happened I think we're up to over 20 times now. Either the Prime Minister or a Minister has said that leaseholders shouldn't have to pay. Michael Gove repeated it last week in a meeting with the Housing Select Committee. That this is what's so painful, because we are all in a position where the government is sort of saying the right things but just does absolutely nothing. And although I completely appreciate this is a very complicated issue, it's going to be a very an expensive problem to sort out. And, nobody really in this situation, including myself, thinks it should just be that the taxpayer pays to sort this mess out. I'm a taxpayer myself. I don't believe that the developers and the industry that's actually responsible for this should get away scot-free. But the problem is the government are the only body that can actually step in, reassure us and say, look, we recognise this is not your fault. You should not having to be going through this. In relation to the mental health crisis that this is causing, we realise that we can't allow this to continue, and actually step in and say, we will sort this out and then we will go after the developers because we have the power to do that. All we've heard so far is we are working on a solution, and it's been over 4 years now, and we just can't carry on much longer.
Well, because what happens to you, you told us you're 25 years old, and, goodness knows what your personal situation is, but you're at that age when people start to make decisions about maybe changes of career, maybe changes of, upsizing, maybe getting somewhere out in the sticks with a couple of bedrooms, and who knows, but you don't have the ability to make those decisions, do you?
No, so I mean, I live with my partner, and we are very much in that position now, where I bought the property when I was 22, so we're sort of looking right. We know a bit more about what we wanting to do work-wise now. Absolutely love Sheffield, want to stay in the area, but we do live right in the city centre, so we'd love to be able to move out somewhere where we've got a garden, and it's just it feels like a sort of a faraway dream at the moment, because it's just not something we can even entertain, because it would just be so disappointing by the time we got to look at trying to sell this place. And I mean, Will, on his piece, he's very lucky that he's been able to get someone to rent his flat out, because there's a lot of people that haven't even been able to do that. And so obviously, it does mean that if for example, I got offered a new job and needed to move to, say, Manchester or somewhere else, I literally would just have to turn that opportunity down at the moment. And there are so many people that I know that has happened to.
That is crazy. And it's really weird. I mean, I spoke earlier on to Olivia, and it's really odd to get to the end of an interview and not be able to go, well, we found something out there. Because all I feel, I mean, at least you've got the anger to keep you going. All anybody else feels here is impotent, because it just is so obvious that you shouldn't be footing the bill for this.
Yeah, exactly.
It has to be obvious to everybody.
Yeah, and I haven't come across anyone who understands the situation and doesn't feel the same way you do. It's it is a complicated matter, and I think sometimes people don't understand that where we are it's not the fault of the people that bought the properties. It's something that was these mistakes were made when the buildings were built by the developers. And so, yeah, I mean, I know Olivia very well. I know her situation over at Mandale is really difficult as well. And I think, like you say, that the outrage it's kind of what keeps us going. But at the same time, there isn't really an option to stop. We are in a position where if we don't try to keep speaking out about this, lobbying MPs, trying to, I'm on the End Our Cladding Scandal campaign team, and we regularly meet with ministers. The team met with Michael Gove a few weeks ago, and it's, it is exhausting. I work a full-time job in the day, and then in the evenings it becomes, right, what we're doing for the cladding side of our lives, and it's totally exhausting. But there's just no other option until we have a resolution to this. It's not something I can just sit back and sort of think, okay, well, I hope that resolves itself, because it is literally the sort of thing that could ruin my life forever. If I have to declare bankruptcy, there are professions that I would never be able to go into. That, it's such a serious thing that if I have to pay, extortionate bills that I can't afford, it genuinely is something that will be with me forever.
Jenny, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. That's Jenny Garrett there. Yeah, like I say, normally you come to the end of an interview and at least you've got some kind of resolution or some kind of understanding, but I just can't believe it. You know, I remember sat watching that horrific pictures that came in from Grenfell. And obviously we would just sort this out. Of course we would. And we just flipping haven't we? It's crazy. It's Toby at Breakfast. It's BBC Radio Sheffield.